an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Haunting of Bly Manor. Season 1, Episode 2, The Pupil. In this episode, we find out exactly what got Miles kicked out of school. And kids, I'm here to tell you, I don't think there's any redeeming this kid for me after he killed an innocent bird. That's it for me. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Ashleigh for commissioning this episode. So I had like a kind of helpful presence because Owen came home early today and sat with me for like the first half hour of the show. And then, no joke, you guys, just as we were getting into the hide and seek, he had to go take a work call. Or no, he had a doctor appointment, like a Zoom appointment. And he got up and left right before they started to play hide and go seek. And I was so mad. I don't know what kind of fucking psychopath agrees to play hide and seek in a house like this in the dark. But as far as I'm concerned, that's a wrap. They all deserve to die for agreeing to this. Not one of them deserves to live after choosing this. You chose it. You chose it. That's it. Nary a one. I mean, first of all, hide and seek in the dark, in the best of times, is so creepy and really dangerous also, depending on like the kind of house that you live in. And this house is nothing but fucking like weird halls with like steps and chutes and what do they call dumbwaiters, and like just don't walk around in the dark in general in a house like this at all. And then to be like purposely doing it for a game, you're gonna break your neck. Well, let's take ghosts entirely out of the equation. You're gonna break your neck, and you know what? You're going to deserve it. I'm not going to feel bad for you. So that's where I stand on this right now. And I'm saying all of this, obviously, as a means to sort of like delay getting to the thing that we know we're all going to have to talk about eventually, which is the ghosts. Y'all, look, I have so much to talk about regarding the ghosts, but the main takeaway that I had from this episode is that there is something in the basement that sings along with Flora. It's one of the creepiest things I've ever seen on television. That whole thing. She turns around and tells it, shh, and it just goes limp like a rag doll. And like we saw the dolls. So I don't know if it's like a ghost is inhabiting the doll. If there's a ghost over there along with the dolls? I don't know what to think. But, oh my God. The term, it made my blood run cold, feels very appropriate here. I don't feel like I ever truly understood the meaning of it until now. Truly, when I began to realize that there was a second voice chiming in with her, I just wanted to nope right the fuck out. Like, if I hadn't been watching this for this, I think I might have turned it off right then and just been like, I don't think so. I don't think this show is for me. I don't think I could have finished it. And I'll be honest with y'all, I looked away so much during the hide and seek that I am going to be watching it practically for the first time as we talk about it. So I hope that you guys get ready for me to notice a bunch of things that I didn't notice at all the first time because I couldn't bear to look at the screen. So with that said, let's see. Ashleigh says, the part with the singing lady is the creepiest thing. Definitely a standout moment for me, at least this episode. That and the doll thing in the basement. Yes. The singing. Look, I know that there was somebody who got brought into the studio and they were like, sing this song, but do it creepy. And I just want to say that that person deserves a raise. Because you could give that assignment to any number of people and they would not pull it off the way that this person pulled this off. That's, I've heard spooky singing before. I have heard a lot of spooky voices and spooky singing in my time with the things that I cover and the various things that I have watched. That was the worst one. Like, that's the worst one. I can't think of worse than that. I'm sure that if you brought up something, I'd be like, oh, well, maybe, but really, that's the worst one. So, okay. Now that that's out of the way, let's actually begin talking about the episode. So we begin with the two children basically being glared at and reprimanded by Danny because of the stunt that they pulled the night before. Locking her in the closet, going outside, all of the muddy footprints. And Mrs. Gross is cleaning up the footprints, and she says something about how this happens every now and then and that she's pretty used to it. But Danny is uninterested in treating these kids like they're made of china. The whole thing is, oh, they lost somebody and it's just tragic and you can't blame them for what they've done. Danny doesn't take that approach. She's very much like, oh no, we can absolutely, they're old enough to know better. Yeah, they may act out. They've gone through some shit that sucks and is valid, but also they know how to behave. And I'm not going to accept this, please feel sorry for me shit. 2 years after the event, they should know by now. And honestly, good for her. I really enjoy the fact that Danny is able to say to them, I forgive you, but I have to say that I don't believe you regarding their story. Because they try to act like the door just got stuck. When she says something about the mess outside, Miles says it's just a bit of mud. And he says it's not even an explanation. It's not telling her what exactly happened. It's just a bit of mud isn't anything like an explanation or apology. It's trying to minimize the whole thing and make it like it wasn't such a big deal. If you don't want me to think it's a big deal, then tell me what happened. Otherwise, no, it is a big deal and I'm definitely going to see it that way. What do you think is going to happen? So, Melanie says, it's been months since I watched this series and Danny's reaction to being locked in the closet still sticks with me. Yeah, that is some good acting. I mean, I don't know, again, if it's her just being what's the word? Claustrophobic. Or if it's a reaction to knowing that thing has been behind her and feeling like she's trapped with it. A combo. If it's a trauma that's something in her history that this is reminding her a little bit too much of. I don't know. But either way, there's a real sense of panic. And that comes up again this episode. At one point when Flora turns around and she's wearing those glasses that are clearly on whatever the ghost is that's following her around. And she sort of hyperventilates. She goes out into the garden and tries to let herself cry because she thinks she's alone. And it turns out that the gardener is right there and hears the whole thing. And as somebody who doesn't really showing emotion, and when I've talked before about how I'll show emotion while I'm recording, but it's really often it's about whatever subject matter I'm covering and not about what's going on with me at the moment. So they're very different things. But I am definitely somebody who I will have a reaction and I will run off and try and be alone to let myself have a meltdown privately. I don't like people seeing me react. I don't like feeling as if I'm putting someone on the spot to have to comfort me, especially because it doesn't work. I know it's not going to work. So it's just awkward for both of us. And I just don't want to deal with that. I would like to just experience the thing and get past it and move on. So her choosing to like run outside really made sense to me. You're not going to go into a bathroom because it's echoey in there. People are going to hear you. Where is someplace that you can almost guarantee to be alone? Running around the side of the house onto the grounds makes sense. It's not her fault that the gardener's right there. You know, that would have been a good spot. But yeah, she is just extremely convincing in both of those scenes. And this is part of what I really like about this versus what I saw so far of Hill House. Not to say that this is better. It's just for me, I'm connecting more with this show than I did Hill House initially. The fact that there is some trauma that she's bringing to this location with her that has nothing to do with the house itself. She has some shit going on of her own. And there is something about that to me feels a little bit more interesting. It's one thing to just have a haunted house. And that's all well and good. There's nothing wrong with that kind of story. I'm all about it usually. But haunted people, you know, and mixing up those people with the haunted house and there being like different, that's just its own twist. That's much more like, oh, well then what is this kind of moment, you know? Ooh, sorry guys. I have my little stool under here and I kicked it. Let me move that. So there's this really weird moment as they're talking over what happened the night before. She's trying to get them to like be honest about what went on. And Flora goes and picks up the doll from under her dresser that has been such an issue recently, right? It's the doll that Danny moved and it seemed to really upset Flora, so she put it back. Then she kicks it. And that seemed to lead to both of them locking her in the closet. At this point, Miles grabs it out of Flora's hand and goes sprinting to the laundry chute and throws the doll down the laundry chute. And it's a really weird moment because, like, I didn't know what to make of it, to be honest. It's felt to me this whole time like this doll represents the lady in the lake, that ghost, which I assume exists, and that they don't want to fuck with it or make it angry or put it places it shouldn't be or kick it, you know, like anything that will anger it, that will get its attention. So for him to grab it away from Flora and throw it down the laundry chute was very puzzling because I'm like, that seems like the exact sort of thing that would set off this ghost, which I thought is not what you wanted. Once we see all of the ghosts piled up in the basement, I'm like, maybe that's what he intended to do, to like put it with the other dolls that are down there. But if that is the case, then why didn't they just do that to begin with? Like, it just, and Flora doesn't seem surprised that he has done this, doesn't seem as upset with him as I would have expected. And Danny going downstairs to get it doesn't seem to bother Flora either. Because at first, when she doesn't seem to have much of a reaction, I was like, okay, maybe she's done with this doll. Maybe it doesn't mean what it did all of a sudden. Something happened maybe, and it's like, you know, I don't know. But the fact that she doesn't try to tell Danny, oh no, I don't need the doll, just leave it down there. She like lets her go and get it and is fine with that. This is very puzzling. I really don't know what to make of the sort of about face of their behavior. It feels almost like whatever they did the night before, going out onto the grounds and into the mud and whatnot, sort of like brought them back to square one with this doll somehow. But I don't really know how that would happen. I don't really have any theories on that. So Danny, understandably, is very upset at Miles for grabbing this doll and running off and throwing it down the chute. She's really feeling like he has been acting out a lot today and she does not care for this. And you know what? I'm going to teach him a lesson. And so she gives him the mop and basically is like, you are going to clean up this mess. He tries to say it's not fair. And she's like, isn't it? I really think it is, actually. And pretty much sticks to her guns here. And I liked it. So then we have the scene where she goes to get the doll from the basement, and Flora stays upstairs with Owen and has some orange juice while Flora goes down there. And she says a few times that the cellar is like simply dreadful, or something that feels like simply splendid, but in reverse. Perfectly dreadful, I think, something like that. And when Owen tries to say something like, brother sucks sometimes, huh? She basically defends him. And it's a really sweet moment of like Owen being impressed with her maturity in this moment and seeing her brother like as a real, you know, as more than just the dude who did this shit to her. But it's also just like, it's obviously evidence that there is something happening between the two of them that other people don't understand. You know, they have something that they are experiencing, and she's taking that all into account. When she goes down to the basement to get the doll, it's standing. And I hated it. It's standing up. The odds of it dropping from that chute and landing on its little tiny tippy feet or whatever, it's so deeply unlikely. And she crouches down to get it, and this is when we see all of the dolls that are like in the corner, and we hear her feet going up the stairs and the door creaking and slamming shut, and the one doll just slightly moves. You guys, I just watched it right now as I was describing it, and it doesn't matter that I knew this was going to happen. I swear to God, I still almost like screamed. It's just the slightest movement. If you weren't really paying attention, you'd miss it. Oh, the worst. I hate it. Oh my God. Ashleigh says, I think what was going on was that Flora was going to give Danny some kind of explanation, and Miles grabbed the doll to interrupt, and Flora backs down from explaining and allows Danny to be sidetracked with retrieving the doll. Ah, okay. I see that, Ashleigh. It's just him just trying to like buy some time to be like, girl, no, don't say shit. I wish that he would trust Danny enough to tell her, though, because knowing that she sees somebody in the mirrors or reflections behind her means that she would be predisposed to believe a ghost story. Any other adult, they tell any other adult this kind of thing that they don't know, and they're just going to be like, oh, you fucking kids coming up with this shit. Get out of here. But we know if anybody's going to believe and understand, it's Danny. And it's such an unfortunate thing that they don't realize that about her yet. You know, like, I just want her to tell them so badly and explain. So Ashleigh says, dolls are the second creepiest thing in horror movies to me, right after your reflection not acting like it's supposed to. That was one of the images that I used for an Unspooked last year, I think, or the year before, was a little girl looking in the mirror and smiling, and the like image looking back at her was like making this face, and it was just the worst. Ashleigh says in all caps, I know. Sorry. Yeah, that moment in Key House, what's the name of that show? Where their mirrors act weird, or their reflections act weird. That was a bit of a freaky one. The doll story. Have I told you guys about the doll thing that happened to a friend of mine? This story, I'm going to make it quick, but it is really funny. He was at his friend's house, and he had gotten really stoned, and he was looking for the bathroom, and they were watching some movie. I don't even think it was a scary movie, but he was trying to find the bathroom, and he'd never been at this guy's house before. And he didn't know that the guys, because he was young at the time, he didn't know his mother repaired dolls for a living. It was like her hobby slash like small cottage business, you know. So he's looking for the bathroom while he's stoned out of his mind. And goes into this room and turns the light on, and it's just doll heads and doll eyes in a tray and like doll arms and legs like hanging from little hooks to keep them organized. And he said that he almost had a fucking heart attack and that he like screamed like a child. And a couple of his friends came sprinting wondering what the hell was going on. And when they realized what was happening, they laughed so hard that they were literally on the ground because they like totally understood why he was so freaked out. But just like coming at it after the fact was just so funny. And I feel like I wouldn't have to be stoned. I think I'd still react that way. No, thank you, you know? So, okay. She goes and gets the doll. She asks Flora what's her name. And Flora says she can't remember. So Danny asks her, are you going to hang it in your room for protection? And when she says this, it looks like she's holding the doll. But when we come up the stairs, she's like given the doll to Flora already. And it looks like she's holding something else. And I got a little confused here because at first I thought she meant, are you going to hang the doll in your room for protection? But I don't know if there's something that I missed here. If you guys want to fill in the blank. But regardless, Flora says, no, it doesn't work. In a way that sounds very authoritative. She's tried this shit. And it should be, like, clear by now whether it worked or not. So she comes upstairs expecting to find Miles mopping the floor. The mop and bucket are still there. But Miles is nowhere to be found. And she begins walking around searching for him and eventually finds him in the sort of classroom. And Miles is being really weird here, just sitting and staring out the window. And she's trying to ask him if he's okay, and he's ignoring her. And then we go into this prolonged flashback. Let's see. Ashley's saying, pause at 6:10-ish. You're just at that point. Ooh, hold on, let me see. 6:10. I'm looking. I don't see. I'm at exactly 6:10. Hold on. Let me go back 10 seconds. I feel like you want me to be spooked right now, Ashleigh, and I don't thank you for that. Okay, so she's coming down the stairs. And there's the crisscrossing stairs, and it's really weird looking, honestly. How do these stairs all exist? She comes down to the bottom of the stairs and is in the huge foyer, and then she goes into the next room and opens the door. I don't know if I missed it, but I paused it and I didn't see whatever it is. Do you see the hallway? I saw the hallway. While she's in the foyer. Let me go back again. Okay, so there's a hallway. I see a table. Oh no! Oh God! Oh! Why did you point that out? Oh God! Oh, you monster. I hate you. Oh, the way my heart stopped. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you all. Okay. Okay, so, prolonged flashback. He's in school. It's the first day of term, evidently, coming back from Christmas break. And it's clearly boarding school. And it's like a Catholic school. And it might not be Catholic. I don't know. But regardless, it's a Bible-based education that they're getting here. And they are being taught by a priest. And the priest, honestly, has a really good vibe. He seems like such a sincere man who really wants what's best for his students and seems to really care. And that's what makes what happens so much worse later. So they all they're listening to this story. Matthew 8:28-34 and Mark 5:1-20. And it's about that story where Jesus cast out the demons from this like possessed person into a herd of pigs, and they go running off this cliff and die. And it's always been a really weird story to me, because it just seemed like the swine, like the demons wanted to commit suicide. It was sort of a weird, I didn't understand the demons' like goals here. Wouldn't you want to just occupy a live body as long as you could? I don't know. But he's talking about how different accounts of this same story and the same event vary, and how despite the fact that they vary, there are a lot of like correlations, and you can come to sort of the same conclusions from them. The details aren't strictly what's important. As he gets to the end of the story, Miles asks that like about the question of consent, and says, did they need his permission? About, I think what he means, like the demons being able to enter the pigs. I'm going to read exactly what he says here. Here it is. Did they need it for the man? And he says, that's an excellent question. And actually, kind of the point of the story is that even demons can't usurp our free will. We are always able to make our own choices, and we get tempted, but we're never compelled. And it really feels significant here that Miles is asking this question. The idea of a possession is something that seems to be on his mind, and it makes me wonder later, again, whether or not he is always himself. I wonder if the sister is always herself either. Miles is the one that feels the most threatening, but it's unclear. It seems to me like Miles is asking whether or not whatever the thing is that's trying to possess him can do it if he doesn't agree to it. And to me, it's a very loaded question, and the fact that he's asking something that specific, it's taken as like kind of an indicator of this kid is paying attention and he's thinking the right way by the priest. But really, if a kid asks a question like this, you have to be like, why is that what you're focusing on? Like, what are you asking, dude? Why do you want to know? So the teacher calls him to the front a little bit after class and says, you got a piece of mail already today, which is very unusual for people to get on the very first day back. Your sister sent it. And we don't see what it says until later. We do see that the priest has a pet pigeon. And I knew as soon as I saw this fucking thing that it was going to die. Its days were numbered, kids. It was just, there was no way about it. So he says something about how I want you to know that this room is a safe place for questions. And it's very clear. Earlier, he was talking about how the accounts of this story are different because men are fallible. And it's obviously like not all priests are willing to take this sort of point of view when it comes to the Bible and admit that maybe this isn't totally accurate. Maybe it was written by human beings and therefore flawed. And he seems aware that maybe some parents are going to have an issue with this. But here, when he's talking about it's the right place to ask questions, initially I thought he meant, like, if you want to, rap about what might not be true in the Bible. And then I realized he's concerned because he knows this kid lost his parents recently. And he isn't sure what, questions are on his mind. Because when you lose somebody, you want to know what happened to them, especially when you're younger. So he's sort of anticipating that sort of question. So Daniel goes and he reads an entry that the priest told him he had found comforting himself when going through similar things. And the passage is, so also you now indeed have sorrow, but I will see you again, and your heart shall rejoice, and your joy no man shall take from you. And he doesn't seem very moved by this. He seems more confused by it than anything. A little bit later, he says something to the priest about why don't the good ones get to come back? Why do only the bad ones get to come back? And I have nothing to say about that. That just feels very self-explanatory. This moment, you shall see them again, your joy won't be taken from you. I can't tell if that has anything to do with what happens next, because we watch him climb a tree, and the priest is outside keeping an eye on everybody and sees him climbing, and he's going too high. It's obviously dangerous. And eventually, as he gets to the top, he closes his eyes and he just lets himself fall. His friend, to be honest, I was impressed, because his friend sees him and really calls him out and is like, I saw you jump. Don't try to pretend with me. I know something's going on, and you don't have to tell me what's happening, but I'm here if you want to talk about anything. And I really appreciated that from a kid so young, just being like, you're full of shit, but I respect that you don't want to chat, but if you change your mind, I'm going to be right here on this top bunk, okay? So we see him come in later with the broken arm, and it's treated as if it's an accident. And then we cut to the next day, and he has gotten in a fight in the hall. At first I thought it was with the kid that was in the top bunk, but then I'm like, I think this is just a random kid that he picked. And he's choking this kid out in a way that makes me wonder where the fuck he even learned this. And as he's choking the kid out, there's an expression on his face. It is the same kid, says Ashleigh. Oh, okay. As he's choking this kid out, it's such a shame that if it's the same kid, this person who tried to reach out to him, he just looks like he doesn't want to be doing this. There's almost a look on Miles's face like he's about to cry. It's awful. And they get separated, and fucking this kid, Hooper, I think his name is unconscious. He has to be sort of brought back to himself. It takes a minute. And we see Miles use this same move on Danny in the midst of the hide and seek. And I gotta tell you guys, I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if this is supposed to be I don't know. Because at first it feels like he's trying to kill himself. But then I'm like, well, maybe he's just trying to hurt himself. Maybe he was hoping that if he broke his arm, he'd get sent home and not have to keep. Then this bit of acting up isn't quite enough either. And he says something later about how he's looking for the key. And he says it about the priest, I was looking for your key. And I couldn't tell that, all I kept thinking was he's trying to find a reason to be sent home. But saying I was trying to find your key feels so much more personal and so much more specific than just I needed to be sent home. And I don't really know what to think about that either. And the thing with the killing, because in the end, he kills the priest pigeon. And that is what turns out to be enough. The headmaster is sort of ready to be we will move past this if you're willing to at least apologize and show some remorse. And he isn't. But it doesn't feel like it's because he doesn't feel any. He says something like, I wish I did something worse. I wish I cut its head off or spread its guts out or something. And it's I don't even know if I believe him when he's saying it. It feels like he's saying what needs to be said in order to really establish that he's not sorry and therefore get sent home. He's just trying to lean into it. Because Ashleigh is saying this is a baby serial killer in the making, killing animals, his whole general demeanor. I would agree with you if it didn't feel like there's some sort of objective. It doesn't feel genuine to me. it's not like he's doing this for fun and like enjoying torturing an animal. He's not enjoying torturing this kid and like making him pass out. He looks really unhappy, and there's something else going on here. I don't know. And so good point. Ashleigh says, at the start of class, the priest told them that the other boy wasn't there because he had a fall. You're right. I forgot about that. So yeah, that might have been his first go-to bit, because he was like, maybe that'll work. So yeah, this like moment of finding the dead bird, it's so sad, the whole thing. I just felt so bad for this priest who like can tell. I think he can tell this kid isn't doing this stuff because he's like a psycho. There's something going on, and I don't know what it is, and I just want him to fucking talk to me. But, you know, what's this kid gonna tell you? And there's a sense to Miles of being like, man, I've just been trying to find the thing that would like get you to leave off trying to help me. And I don't know if that's what he means by find the key, your key. But yeah, it just feels almost like I needed to find the line where you would just let go of me and stop trying to save me, kind of thing. So I feel like I want to say, because then we find out what it says on the letter. And it's just I think it's a drawing. I'm trying to find the spot where he holds it up, because I know that it's something that it happens right before he goes home again. And it's just his sister has told him to come home. And it's like, I think that, what's-his-face finds it later. The kid that he made pass out, Hooper. Is that what it is? Yeah, here it is. Come home. And there's, let's see. It looks like we've got, is that Owen and Mrs. Gross and her? It feels like. It's really hard to tell. Because there's like what looks like a black woman holding a broom, I think. There's a sad girl in pink who's very small. I can't tell if these are ghosts or actual people. The guy who's smiling, it feels sort of like he's meant to be the ghost that we've seen. But it's hard for me to tell. He's got a like blue tie, or maybe it's a blue shirt. It's very hard to say. So we cut from that like memory back to Miles sitting on his bed in his room. So there's no like, we don't return and have him talk to Danny and explain what happened. So I therefore assume we as the audience now know what happened, but he still hasn't told her. And they have been cleaning their rooms and have, you know, just been model children this evening. And it really feels like they're trying to make up for the events of the previous night. They both seem to feel bad about what's happening. And that's what keeps making me like them, despite the fact that they feel like demon children. I'm like, I don't buy that they are doing this all for fun. It doesn't feel like they're the ones who are the problem. It feels like they're trying to do their best to shield her from whatever's in the house. And it doesn't seem like that to her, because she doesn't know what the fuck is going on. And there's just this whole thing that, first of all, the creepy fucking dollhouse that looks like the exact house that they are in is a really smart touch. I think that this show, like, I know that that's not unusual for these kinds of movies / shows, but because the size of this house is hard to grapple with sometimes as a viewer, and you lose your sense of place occasionally, I feel like having the dollhouse to sort of step in every now and then can be helpful, even if it's not exact in terms of, like, you know, where rooms are and whatnot. Danny comes in and realizes that the place is, like, totally spick and span. And she says something to him about things being just splendid. And I know that she's like making a joke, but a part of me got a little anxious, wondering if there wasn't something going on. I don't like the fact that the just splendid is coming out of her mouth now. It just feels like a danger signal. It feels like a red flag, a big waving red flag. Speaking of red flags, we've got Mrs. Gross sitting in the kitchen looking at this crack in the wall, in the tiles, that she asks the gardener, whose name I'm forgetting, to come look at later. And when she does, there is nothing there. And it makes me extremely concerned. We see Mrs. Gross here, drinking tea again. But later on, she's offered a gin and tonic, and she doesn't want it. All we ever see is her drinking tea. And I, again, submit something is wrong. Something's up. And there's a conversation between the gardener and Mrs. Gross about what's going on with the kids and the fact that Danny is being a little bit harder on them than the previous au pair was, and that they are like they seem to be agreeing that that's for the best. The gardener is a little bit more on board with this. Mrs. Gross is tending towards wanting to like be compassionate and soft with them. And the gardener's sort of like, they've been given enough time. They really do need to be handled a bit more. Like, this is appropriate in my experience. You can't give them a pass forever. You clean up after them. Owen feeds them. Rebecca coddled them. And this one is, she has them doing hard labor, and she seems very gratified by this. So Owen comes out. He's got the gin and tonics for them all. And it's honestly kind of sweet to see them chilling. Like, there's something about watching adults that are around children all day and in a place that feels so unsafe. There's something nice about getting to see them relax and have a moment in the sun, drinking and just hanging out. And it's just a bit of peace for a second. Feels very warm and sunny in these moments in a way that's just pretty rare for the show to allow. They tend to, even when we're out in the sunlight, it will have a distinctive sort of bluish cast a lot of the time that makes it feel not homey. It makes it feel sort of like cold and wintry, even though we know it's meant to be summertime outside. So this is the moment where Flora has cleaned up Danny's room, and then she turns around and she's wearing the glasses, and Danny stops dead and goes outside and has a kind of a panic attack. And Flora can see something is up. She's not an idiot. But Danny doesn't want to show that she's upset because this isn't like the little girl's fault. And I love Flora's reaction being like, I didn't break them, I swear. Like, the reaction Danny's having, she thinks is due to she's mishandled her private things, you know, and that's not it. I can't help but wonder why the fuck Danny's carrying these glasses when the haunting man is like behind. Maybe don't carry this shit with you. I don't know. All right. So she goes and she puts the glasses down, and there's a crack in them, I should mention as well. So that's another reason why Danny's like, or Flora says, I didn't break them, because they were broken already. And she goes outside, has her little meltdown. The gardener comes up and is like, hey girl, you're doing great. I cry all the time, but please don't worry about it. You're fine. And then we have the gardener coming inside, preparing to deal with the crack in the wall. And it is not there. And also, thanks, Ashleigh, for pointing out the thing that was standing at the end of the hall that one time. Because when she turns the corner to go into the kitchen, we see it way, way back there. Again. I hate it. So either the crack in the wall was purely imagined by Mrs. Gross, or the lack of crack in the wall is being imagined by the gardener. And then we get the scene that starts off the whole weirdness with Miles. Okay, so he's walking by the kitchen, and the gardener turns and says, "Where are you heading to?" And he says, "Back to the garden. I have a few more weeds to pull." He has his hands in his pockets in a way that does not feel typical of Miles in general. There's a whole vibe to him here that's wrong. She says, "Trying to earn off time for good behavior, then, right?" And he says, "Have a lovely afternoon, Jamie, darling," in a voice that feels far too adult. And she seems a little bit taken aback by him saying darling. Also, she gives a shake of her head and just seems really like weirded out by it. And then we go to him asking for a moment alone with Danny, Miss Clayton. "Might I have a word?" Again, his hands are like behind his back. And he's just, there's a whole sense to him of like not being himself. There's something wrong here. She goes out into the hallway and he says that, "I want a word with you." And as she's going out to meet him, the phone rings, but there's nobody there. And they're dealing with the fact that there's nobody on the phone as Danny goes into the hall and Miles is like weirdly walking backward in a way that was really creepy to me for no good reason. And he says, "I'd like to apologize for all of it, for locking you in the wardrobe closet, for the mess in the hall, all of it. But most importantly, for being such a child about it. Being around Flora, I sometimes forget myself." And he holds out a bouquet of beautiful roses. Again, don't like it. There's a look on his face here that feels too knowing and smirky. It just doesn't feel like a kid. And he gestures for her to come close, and he whispers in her ear, "I think Flora just misses Miss Jessel terribly, so we play little games to keep her from feeling sad." Such a draining thing, dealing with children. And as he says that, he reaches up and smooths her hair back behind her ear. And she stands up and looks alarmed. There's a feeling almost like for me, out of context, just the gesture, the intimacy, and how adult it feels to slide his hand behind her ear, it feels like flirting. It's really adult and just too creepy. But there's also a sense almost like when he says that, dealing with children, that she like recognizes that phrase, or there's something about him saying that feels familiar to her. I don't know. And this is what's making me wonder about the fucking possession thing. So she goes out to the garden later and she finds the roses like completely torn up. And the gardener is saying that little fucking shit. And really like she freaks out a little bit and realizes pretty quickly that she is freaking out too much for what's actually happened. He cut flowers that weren't ready to be cut. Yes, it sucks. This is her job. But also, this isn't that big a deal, really. And she backs off pretty quick and just says, "Can we go back to the part where you were the one acting mental and I was the one talking you down?" And I really enjoy her. Like, as a character, I think she seems very fleshed out already. I get the sense of her, you know? So, cut to the evening, which I just don't like here at this house ever. And they are getting sent upstairs to brush their teeth, change into their pajamas. And we see Mrs. Gross, who is about to leave for the day. "I've got a little surprise set up for the kids if you would like to join." And Mrs. Gross says, "No, I couldn't. And I haven't been sleeping very well. I think I'll just turn in for the night." And there's, the whole thing that Flora has brought up several times, which is that they can't be out of their beds too late. They really have to make sure that they're safely in their rooms. And in this moment, I just really got the feeling that Mrs. Gross is just like, oh no, I go to bed. It's dark. It's time for me to be in my room, and I don't mess around here at night. Mrs. Gross, you're the smart one. I don't know what's going on with you. You're clearly like not totally okay, but let's like set that all aside. So what it turns out that she has planned is that she's going to let them play a game because they have gotten all of their shit taken care of, like they said. And they choose to play hide and seek. And I was really like, honestly, if this is supposed to be such a priority for you, Flora, why are you picking hide and seek? That does not feel like the game to play if you are worried about being back in your bed in a reasonable amount of time. But, and as she says something about hide and seek, she's like looking at the doll under her bureau again. So when she says hide and seek too, Miles doesn't look too happy about it. And I couldn't tell if like he seemed like he just didn't want to do this. And I'm like, what's going on? Because the two of them feel like they aren't on the same page all the time. And I can't tell. I just can't tell what's happening there. It would feel like they would both have the same objective here, to not play this game. Like Flora has seemed to make it pretty clear this is a bad plan. I don't know. So they turn all the lights out for this because they're lunatics. And we see them all running around the house. And the lighting in this show is really, really well done because it's so dark. And it's easier for me to see on my computer, I think, because like in this room right now, as I'm watching it, it's different. But when you're watching it on a television, especially if it's still light out, it is really hard to see almost anything. It is alarming. And, I'm realizing now, I thought that Flora went to the basement, but did she? I'm realizing now, she had said specifically earlier that she hated the basement. Why would she go down there for hide and seek all by herself? That feels like something that you wouldn't do if that was a place that you found dreadful, which she says multiple times. So I'm watching, guys, now as Danny walks slowly around the empty foyer. I'm trying to see if there's like anything in the background because like I said, kept my eyes closed almost this entire time. I think there was one moment where there's like a sort of sound and you see some cloaked figure sort of cross the camera in the background, and she seems to hear it and sort of follows also. But it doesn't seem like she ever actually finds anything. So she's in the classroom, and I'm trying to see, like, because I know that I hardly have any time left, so I'm wanting to make sure that I talk about everything adequately here. Oh, yeah, okay. There's a woman in a dress, not a cloaked figure. It's a woman in a dress, and her dress seems to be sliding off one shoulder. And she's like just observing in a really casual, like, she's got her hand is like holding on to her other arm in a very like what I think of as the Kristen Stewart gesture, sort of, and she sort of seems to hear that and turns and goes out there, but it doesn't seem like she actually finds anything. She keeps thinking, I think, that she's hearing the kids, which, I mean, just again, no, guys, not in this house. Don't do this. Also, can we talk about her fucking mom jeans? I haven't mentioned any of this because the styling in this show, they do try to keep it somewhat subtle, despite the fact that this is, meant to be in like the 90s, I think. But occasionally the horrific, like pleated front jeans, and she's wearing like a denim jacket a little bit later that has like this sort of pin on it with all these dangly bits, and it's really funny. It's the kind of thing that I would have loved. So trying to speed things up here. Oh, right. She goes into the wing that is abandoned, or not even, but it's off limits. And in one of the rooms is a music box that's open and playing Oh Willow Waly. And as she's bending down to look at it, in another room, Flora is humming Oh Willow Waly. But it's not like Flora's in the same room. I don't know how she can hear this, unless she is in the same room. And again, I don't have a great sense of space in this house. But there's a photo in there of a woman with curly hair who looks like the one that was in the background in like just a few seconds ago. Because she had curly hair, dark curly hair, I'm pretty sure. And the dude who's like apparently taking the selfie looks like the guy that we wind up seeing in the window and on the parapet a little bit later, if I'm not mistaken. Oh man, and I should mention too, I'm paused right now on the moment where Flora turns around and says, shh, and we see that like life-sized doll looking at her, and it has no eyes, very much like the opening of the show where everybody's like photos or portraits eyes grow over, and it just like goes back to, oh man, dislike. So she's looking at this photo, and Miles sneaks up on her and says, got you. I'm about to start counting, and it'll be your turn to run and hide. I'll find you. And he starts choking her, really choking her. And it looks like for a moment that she is scared, genuinely like worried. And he runs off and he's counting, and she's trying to tell him, no, sir, the game is over. And turns on the lights as she's like walking down the stairs. And, you know, she's just really agitated here. She doesn't really understand what's going on with Miles. It just seems like he's mostly a decent kid, and then all of a sudden he'll just be this like little demon, you know? So she sees like the curtain moving and assumes that one of the kids is hiding behind it. But when she goes over and opens it, there's nobody there. And she's looking around the room, very agitated because none of the kids are responding to the fact that she's saying the game is over now. And she hears a door creaking and sees a shadow on the ground. And then she turns and looks out the window, and the dude that she had seen earlier on the parapet appears to be outside. There's a look of blurriness to him. So she assumes that that's due to the glass between them. And yet, as she's watching, he sort of like vanishes. And she doesn't think, oh, he vanished because he's a ghost. She thinks, oh, he vanished because he backed away from the window. So she grabs a fire poker and goes outside and is trying to like intimidate him because she thinks that he's out there. And as she's yelling, I'm going to call the fucking police, she hears Miles call her and says, Danny, I don't feel so good. And he's on the other side of the glass. And when she goes inside, he has like collapsed on the floor. And I don't know whether or not this is him trying to get her to come back in, or if it's a like symptom of him maybe being possessed and then feeling shitty once this thing lets go of him. But he collapses and Mrs. Gross comes out because she's heard the commotion. And it's just really hard. Like he sits up and he looks outside at the window, and that dude is standing there again, and he's staring at him as if totally aware of and knowing who this guy is and what it is he's doing. And neither of the two women who are fussing over him because he collapsed seem to notice this image standing there in the window again. And that's how the episode ends, is with Miles just sort of being like fussed over and like glaring at this figure who is smiling at him and smirking. And there's just a sense, because of that face, I keep thinking, is this dude possessing Miles? Has this happened? Like, I don't know how far this show is willing to go with things like that. It's always a tough call too, because like, you know, I'm very back and forth on how much I like the idea of possession stories. It can be done well and spooky and subtly. It can be overdone really badly and sort of ruin things. Like The Conjuring has a possession thing that happens at the end of the movie that I feel really undoes a lot of the spookiness earlier in the movie. And this guy has the vibe of like the significant other who ripped off that previous au pair and like vanished. But I don't know if he feels like he's dressed in modern clothing. That's part of why I feel that way. But yeah, I don't know why he would still be around. Like, what's he doing here? And what is he capable of as a ghost? Because Miles seems genuinely afraid of him. It seems like that's why he tried to get Danny to come back inside. I'm wondering if maybe there was like something that lured their last au pair into the water, and that's how she drowned, that she wasn't trying to commit suicide, that she was like tricked, and he's worried that's going to happen to Danny again, or to Danny, like, you know, another one of his au pairs, and he's trying to get her to come back inside, but I don't know. So I have to wrap up. Ashley says you do see a ghost at about 3207 on the left-hand side of the window. I'm going to check right quick. 3701 on the left-hand side of the window. Okay, I'm pressing play. She walks into the, did you say 37? 3702. Okay, well, all right. So I'm watching on the left-hand side of the window. I'm not seeing it. I may have just missed it, because the lighting in this room is really, really like dark to the point where, yeah, all I'm seeing is the woman outside the door in that dress. But it's fine, because that one creepy ghost that I missed the first time was plenty. So thank you. I'm good. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap up, but thank you again so much to all of you for listening. I hope that you're enjoying the coverage. Thank you again, Ashleigh, for commissioning this. And I will be seeing you all, I think, on Friday again. Let me just double check with a new episode. But a fair amount have been booked already due to the fact that... Oh, I lied. Not on Friday. Next Friday is the next episode. So not until the 29th. But that's fine. I need a little break from being too creepy. Need it. I have to go slow. All right, guys. I will see you next week with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.